In a quiet town on the outskirts of Cebu, a young boy named Miguel spent most of his days dancing in front of an old cracked mirror. His neighbors often heard faint music coming from his small house, the sound of Michael Jackson songs echoing through the air. At only 12 years old, Miguel had already developed an obsession with the king of pop. Every move, every note, every spin fascinated him. He wore a worn-out white glove that he had stitched together using one of his mother's old socks and practiced for hours barefoot on the tiled floor. His dream wasn't just to be like Michael Jackson, it was to stand on a big stage one day and show the world what he could do. His mother, Maria, watched him from the kitchen window after long shifts at a nearby factory. She never had much, but she had faith in her son's passion. Sometimes she would find him asleep still wearing his fedora hat and whispering Michael's lyrics in his dreams. One night, as they sat at the dinner table eating rice and dried fish, Miguel turned to his mother with hopeful eyes and said, "Mama, do you think I'll ever dance in America?" His mother smiled softly and replied, "If you keep believing and working hard, maybe one day." That moment planted a fire in Miguel's heart. He practiced harder than ever, watching Michael Jackson concerts on an old phone, mimicking every gesture and breath. He performed at school events, on the streets during local festivals, and even at the marketplace just to earn a few coins. People began calling him Little MJ of Cebu. One afternoon, while scrolling online, Miguel saw an ad for America's Got Talent auditions happening in Los Angeles. His heart raced. He ran to his mom holding the phone. "Mama, this is it!" he exclaimed. Maria hesitated, they barely had enough for rent. But seeing the sparkle in her son's eyes, she made a silent decision. For months, she worked extra hours, taking in laundry and skipping meals just to save. When Miguel's birthday arrived, she handed him a small envelope containing plane tickets. Tears streamed down his face as he hugged her tightly. "You believe in me?" he asked. "Always," she replied. As their plane took off days later, Miguel pressed his face against the window, clutching his old fedora hat, whispering, "This is for you, Michael." He didn't know what awaited him in Los Angeles, but in his heart, he carried the rhythm of his dream. When the day of the audition arrived, Miguel stood backstage at America's Got Talent, his hands trembling as he watched contestants before him. Some sang, some danced, others performed magic. He wore a sequined jacket his mom had handmade, a fedora slightly too big for his head, and one shining glove. When the stage manager called his name, he took a deep breath and stepped onto the massive stage, lights blinding him for a moment. The audience murmured, a few people gasped when they saw the resemblance to Michael Jackson. Simon Cowell leaned forward, intrigued. "What's your name?" he asked. "My name is Miguel. I'm 12 years old, and I'm from the Philippines," the boy replied, his voice shaking. "And what are you going to do for us today?" "I'm going to perform, Billie Jean," he said with a nervous smile. The music started, and instantly Miguel transformed. His shyness melted away as he moved across the stage, executing each moonwalk, spin, and tilt with precision far beyond his years. The crowd erupted in cheers as he hit every beat perfectly. The judges looked stunned, Sofia Vergara covered her mouth, and Heidi Klum whispered, "He's incredible." As Miguel hit the final pose, hat tilted down, leg crossed, hand in the air, the music stopped. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the audience exploded into applause, people standing, cheering, whistling. Simon Cowell stared at the young boy with disbelief, his eyes slightly watery. He leaned forward and said, "Miguel, that was not just good. That was pure magic." Before Miguel could even respond, Simon stood up, smiled, and slammed the golden buzzer. The theater filled with golden confetti raining down on the boy. Miguel covered his face in shock, then looked up with tears in his eyes as the audience chanted his name. Backstage, his mother burst into tears, holding her chest as she watched her son standing in a shower of gold. When she ran onto the stage to hug him, Simon said gently, "Your son just made history tonight." Miguel whispered in her ear, "We did it, Mama." As the confetti continued to fall, the little boy from Cebu stood center stage, realizing that his dream had just begun. The night after his golden buzzer audition, Miguel sat on the hotel bed staring at the glowing screen of his phone. His audition video had gone viral overnight. Millions of people around the world were sharing it, calling him the young Michael Jackson from the Philippines. His notifications exploded with love from fans in every corner of the globe. Some said his performance made them cry because it brought back the memory of Michael Jackson himself. Others called him an inspiration. Miguel scrolled through comment after comment, his heart swelling with gratitude. He turned to his mom, who was sitting beside him folding his stage clothes, and said softly, "Mama, people know me." She smiled, touched his hair gently, and replied, "They don't just know you, Anik. They feel your heart." The next day, he was invited to do backstage interviews for AGT. The producers asked how long he had been dancing, and Miguel told them about watching Michael's performances on an old phone and teaching himself because they couldn't afford lessons. When they asked what inspired him most, he answered, "Michael Jackson made people smile and forget their pain. I want to do the same." The camera crew looked moved. Later, Simon Cowell appeared in a recorded clip for the show, saying, "When I pressed that golden buzzer, I knew this kid wasn't just talented. He has the soul of a real artist." Those words meant everything to Miguel. In the following weeks, life felt like a whirlwind. Reporters called from Manila. Filipino celebrities tweeted about him. Even a few former Michael Jackson backup dancers posted messages saying they were proud of him. Despite all the sudden fame, Miguel stayed grounded. Every morning, his mom reminded him to pray and rehearse. He practiced his dance moves in the hotel hallway, humming to himself, imagining that every step would bring him closer to the dream he'd carried since childhood. Yet, with all the excitement, he began to feel the pressure of living up to expectations. One night he whispered to his mom, "What if people only liked me because of Michael?" She knelt beside him and said, "They love you because you bring Michael's spirit alive again. But remember, you have your own light too." Those words stayed with him as he prepared for the next round, the live shows, where everything would be harder and the world would be watching again. The stage for the live show was even bigger, brighter, and more intimidating. Miguel stood behind the curtain, hearing the thunderous applause for the previous act. His palms were sweaty, his heart pounding fast. During rehearsals earlier that week, he had forgotten a few steps and almost cried out of frustration. The pressure of being the golden buzzer kid was heavy on his small shoulders. As the stage manager gave him a thumbs up, Miguel closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "Just dance from your heart." The curtain rose, and the spotlight found him standing in his red jacket and hat. The music for "Smooth Criminal" started, and Miguel came alive. His movements were sharp and electric, every beat landing perfectly. Halfway through, he surprised everyone. The background music shifted, and he added a Filipino flair, blending traditional dance rhythms from Cebu with MJ's iconic steps. The crowd gasped in delight. The judges leaned forward, their faces glowing with amazement. When the performance ended, the room erupted in cheers. The audience stood on their feet, clapping and shouting his name. Heidi Klum said with a wide smile, "You didn't just copy Michael Jackson tonight, you created something new. You made him live again through your culture." Howie Mandel nodded and added, "That was creativity, passion, and perfection from a 12-year-old kid. I'm speechless." Miguel looked toward Simon, nervous and hopeful. Simon leaned into the mic and said softly, "Miguel, you could have just done another impression tonight, but you didn't. You showed us who you are. That's what makes a star." Miguel smiled, tears filling his eyes as the audience continued cheering. Backstage, his mom hugged him tightly and whispered, "See? I told you. You don't need to be Michael Jackson. You just need to be Miguel." As they walked out into the night air, the boy looked up at the stars above the Hollywood skyline and whispered, "I'll make you proud, Mama. I'll make Michael proud too." That night, as he drifted off to sleep, the cheers of the audience still echoed in his dreams, reminding him that his journey was far from over. It was only getting started. The night of the semifinal round arrived, and Miguel could feel his heart pounding like a drum. The stage lights glimmered in the distance as he sat quietly in his dressing room, staring at the reflection of his small face in the mirror. For this performance, he had chosen something different, something raw. He wasn't going to moonwalk or spin this time. Instead, he would sing and move with emotion. The song he picked was Michael Jackson's "Man in the Mirror," a piece that carried the message he wanted to share with the world. His mother stood behind him, adjusting his collar, and whispered, "Just sing with your heart, Hio. Let them see the real you." Miguel nodded, taking a deep breath as the stage manager called his name. The theater went silent when the first piano notes filled the air. Miguel stepped into the spotlight wearing a simple white shirt and black pants, his sequined jacket folded neatly backstage. As he began to sing, his voice was clear, tender, and filled with soul. Behind him, a large screen displayed images of his hometown in Cebu, the small streets, the children dancing barefoot, and the smile of his hard-working mother. Each note carried emotion, every lyric felt like a confession. The audience listened in complete silence, many wiping away tears. When he reached the line, "If you wanna make the world a better place," he lifted his hand toward the audience as though reaching out to everyone watching, asking them to believe. When the final note faded, the crowd rose to its feet in thunderous applause. Simon Cowell stood up slowly, visibly emotional. His voice cracked slightly as he said, "Miguel, that was more than just a song. That was truth. You didn't just perform, you made us feel." Sofia Vergara wiped her eyes and added, "You're not just a performer, you're a storyteller." The young boy covered his face, overwhelmed by the love he felt from thousands of people cheering his name. As he walked off stage, his mother caught him in her arms. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Later that night, when the results were announced, the audience held their breath. Miguel's name echoed through the arena, he was going to the finals. The crowd went wild. Miguel hugged his mom tightly and said, "We made it, Mama. I'm one step closer." Simon looked at him from the judges' table and smiled knowingly, as if he already saw the star Miguel was destined to become. The grand finale came faster than he expected. The energy backstage was electric, lights, cameras, and nervous excitement filled the air. Miguel had decided to do something extraordinary for his final act, a tribute that would honor both his idol and his home country. He created a medley that combined Michael Jackson's biggest hits, Thriller, Black or White, and Heal the World. But he planned to make it his own, blending Filipino instruments and rhythms into the music. He wanted the performance to represent unity, the idea that dreams have no borders. When the curtain rose, the audience gasped. Miguel stood at the center of the stage in a dazzling gold and white outfit, surrounded by a children's choir dressed in Filipino attire. The music began, and he moved with power and grace, every step radiating confidence. The transitions between songs were seamless, and the mix of traditional Filipino beats with Michael Jackson's music felt magical. As he sang, "Heal the World," the choir joined him, waving both American and Filipino flags. The audience stood up, clapping in rhythm. Some were crying, others smiling. It was one of those moments that transcended language and culture. When the music ended, Miguel stood still, breathing heavily, his small frame glowing under the stage lights. For a few seconds, there was silence, then an eruption of applause that shook the entire arena. Simon Cowell stood and walked onto the stage, something rarely seen on AGT. He hugged Miguel and said, "Michael would be proud of you. You didn't just honor him tonight, you honored everyone who ever dared to dream." When the final results were announced, Miguel held his mother's hand tightly. The hosts paused dramatically before calling out, "The winner of America's Got Talent 2025 is Miguel from the Philippines." The confetti exploded, gold and silver raining down from above. The audience screamed, and Miguel broke down in tears, falling into his mother's arms. She whispered, "You did it, my son. You made your dream come true." Simon joined them on stage, placing his hand on Miguel's shoulder and saying softly, "Remember this moment. You've just made history." Under the falling confetti, Miguel looked up to the sky, whispering, "Thank you, Michael," before holding his mother's hand high. The little boy from Cebu had not only won a competition, he had won the hearts of millions, proving that no dream is ever too big when you dance with your soul.